Welcome back. It's our Thursday edition of On the Hill with Pat Deacon Sports Talk. And we got a couple of big games. One in particular in the SEC East. Another big conference matchup. And we're going to bring in and talk to Big Blue Nation's Kevin McGuffey. Kevin, welcome to the Hill. Can you hear me now, Kevin?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we had a little small tech issue, but let's talk about the South Carolina Kentucky matchup. On the Kentucky side of it, what does Coach Stoops and the offensive staff feel good about when going into this matchup versus the Gamecocks? South Carolina's coming off a big road win there in Columbia, Missouri versus the Tigers of Missouri. They're 1-0. What's the mood in Lexington heading into this offensively?
Right now, after two games, I think the mood is kind of cautiously optimistic. They got a nice win at Southern Miss. Got revenge for last season. But, last week the first half they looked pretty horrible against Eastern Kentucky. They were down 13-3 at one point, and then they finally got it together in the second half. I think it's kind of the tradition for a UK football fan. You're always cautiously optimistic. They beat South Carolina 3 times in a row, and if they're able to win Saturday, it'll be the first time since the late 40s, that Kentucky's beaten an SEC team 4 years in a row, other than Vanderbilt. So, wow. Everybody's just kind of cautiously optimistic. I think they're going to have to try to control the ball with Benny Snell. Snell hurt his rib against Eastern Kentucky and was out of the game for a while, but then came back, and he ended up rushing for over 100 yards. He told everybody he's fine, 100%, I'm good to go on Saturday. I think, they've got to try to control the ball, keep Bentley and, Deebo Samuel, keep those guys off the field. And I guess the other question they're going to do is, what are we doing, with the Wildcat? The Wildcat was so successful last season, and, this year, I don't know if everybody's just ready for it or expecting it. It's just not been working.
Right.
So, to the point where, offensive coordinator Eddie Grand said, well, we might just not run it. We just might not run it again this year. But, of course, that's coach speak. They're not really going to, give up on something that's been so successful. But, they've had some injuries on the offensive line. They've had to shuffle some people around. So, but, last year, 2 games, the offense struggled for 2 games last year, and then it kind of got together, picked it up in the third game. But of course, going to South Carolina is never an easy task.
When you look at this team in the receiving game versus the South Carolina secondary, Coach Grand being the offensive coordinator, we all know South Carolina has a pretty salty back end. Is it real? How important is it that you guys were able to establish some sort of a passing game to kind of, with the injured Benny Snell, take a little load off him, and then, kind of be able to be a balanced offense? How big is that?
I think it'd be a very big thing. CJ Conrad, seems like we're always talking about him.
Right.
He had a big game against Southern Mississippi, and then he did have a touchdown catch last Saturday, but by and large he kind of disappeared. Try to get him involved. I would like to see him come out, first two plays of the game and just, throw it deep. Let Garrett Johnson or, Taven Richardson, one of those guys, just come out, throw the deep ball and see what happens. Now, I'm not an offensive coordinator, but that's what I would like to see. I would love to see him come out and stretch the field to start the game and maybe try to get Carolina back on their heels a little bit, and then you start pounding the ball with Benny Snell and Siam King, A.J. Rose. I think an X factor, maybe, Lynn Bowden. We've talked about him a lot. He played sparingly against Southern Miss, and then I don't know if you saw, he got ejected in the first quarter last week on a targeting penalty that I'm not really sure was a penalty. So, we've heard what he can do, but nobody's actually been able to see what he could do. This could be, I have a longer preview that's going up went up this afternoon. It's Last Word on collegefootball.com talking about the game, and I had Bowden listed as an X factor because Kentucky fans don't know what to expect. South Carolina doesn't know what to expect. We know the guy is really good. It's just a matter of getting him out there and letting him see what he can do.
When you look at this side of Bentley and they got some dangerous offensive weapons with South Carolina. Defensively, what does Kentucky have to do on Saturday in Williams-Brice Stadium, to kind of give themselves a good chance to be successful on that side of the ball?
Well, I think kind of what we were talking about in reverse. Of course, first of all, I would like, want to mention, Jordan Jones, the all-SEC linebacker, is dealing with a shoulder injury, and his status for Saturday is kind of up in the air right now. There was reports online last night that he had a broken collarbone, but that appears, to be false. I think Coach Stoops is supposed to give an update after they practice this afternoon. Jordan Jones can't go, and Eli Brown, who's a very, very talented sophomore, would be the next man up. I think, it's kind of the opposite. I think Kentucky, needs, the vaunted secondary, that had some struggles so far this year. I think they need to try to, find a way to stop Samuel, stop the other receiver, Edwards, and force Carolina to run the ball because, at least if you look at the stats, Carolina's, I think, 12th or 13th in the SEC in rushing. So I think, try to force them to run, and then when they do pass, Denzel Ware, Josh Allen, those guys just try to get pressure, make him hurry, and, see what happens.
Talking with Kevin McGuffey of Big Blue Nation here on the Hill of Pat Jenkins Sports Talk. This segment is brought to you by Lindsay & Associates with locations in Fayetteville, also 2 locations in Rogers. This segment is also brought to you by Locomotion, located in Fayetteville below the Northwest Arkansas Mall. And if you don't get a chance to catch us here on our live stream from 1 to 2 each and every day of On the Hill with Pat Jenkins, be sure to check us out on iHeart as we like to podcast the top segment of each show on a daily basis. But we've got about a minute and a half, Kevin, and I got one question to ask you.
Okay.
In your humble opinion, what is the biggest matchup of Saturday's SEC tilt versus South Carolina and Kentucky, and why do you feel that way?
I really think probably the matchup with Samuel, versus the Kentucky secondary with Westry and Beatty and those guys. I think if they can control, keep them in check, and like I said, force Carolina to try to run the ball, I think they have a really good chance of winning. And then, we could say on the flip side, I would really want to see Kentucky get out and stretch the game, stretch the field and see what happens. But I really think, I really think that defense, the secondary versus the, Bentley and the Carolina receivers, I think is probably going to be, in my opinion, the biggest matchup probably for the game. And whoever, wins that is probably going to end up winning.
Hey, as always, Kev, thanks for coming on and talking a little South Carolina, Kentucky. We'll bring you back next week, recap this game, and then you guys have another big Eastern tilt when you guys host the Florida Gators. We'll talk Gators and Cats as well. But as always, thanks for taking time out on the Hill, my man.
Thanks for having me on, Pat. I really appreciate it. Y'all have a great day, and thank you very much.
All right. That was Kevin McGuffey of Big Blue Nation. Came on and gave us the Cats' perspective heading into this big ball game with Will Muschamp and the South Carolina Gamecocks in Columbia, South Carolina on Saturday. But like I keep telling you, in the SEC, there's always 2 sides to every story. And we're going to catch the eastern side of this Kentucky matchup with Will Gunner of Spurs and Feathers coming on and talk a little Gamecock. It's On the Hill with Pat Jenkins. He's up next. Back in a moment.
Christopher got them dope